Alright, what's up pilots? We're going to do a quick video for one of my buddies here on some hinges. Of course he received a plane from a known company that sometimes sends some broken items. So the rudder came torn off of his glider, and since it's a glider I'm going to show a couple different hinges I'd use and what I typically use. So start off with the typical here's what we used in nitro a lot, is your nylon T-pin hinge. This basically is just epoxied in. You have a metal pin through it. It's nylon, does not rip. And on the balsas, you know, we would locate a hole, drill through one of the holes, and tap a very, very small dowel through it and epoxy it in. But either way, you epoxy both sides in, being really careful not to get epoxy on the hinge. These are really strong, really easy to move. They do not have a lot of friction, so they've been around for years. Awesome hinge. That's a Dubro on those. These are also Dubro. These are another style pin hinge. These I would stick to for more of like 3D biplanes, things like that. Maybe V-tails even. But yeah, it's a really, really strong hinge, and it goes deep into the wing, has cutbacks on it. Epoxy that in, you know, just like anything else, and you got a hinge that's 90 degree. So when you're mounting these on a wing with a dihedral, or a wing like on the Corsair here that's got a gold to it, you just want to make sure to really, really test fit it. Now the other ones you can use are CA hinges. These are some of my favorites. These are great planes. These aren't my favorite. These are good hinges, but they're not my favorite. The ones I go with are Radio South. These are pro hinges, and they don't just call them that. The pros actually fly these in their 3Ds, and I mean giant, the giant gasoline and nitros. These are really strong, even though it is a very thin piece of fiber. But they come already cut up in these squares, and you get a lot of them for about half the price of the Great Plains. And Radio South's a great brand, all their stuff. So enough of that, we're gonna get on to it. So those are the type of hinges. As you can see on my Corsair, I always replace, I always cut off my control surfaces on an ARF that I buy off the net, and I always replace it with my own control hinges. So I'm putting 3 nylon pin hinges in this one, and you'll notice I got the tape. The tape just goes over the pin in it, so that when I do epoxy it and push it up in there, the tape will butt right up against it, and it'll keep epoxy from getting onto my pins. So I'm getting ready to do the Mustang. I'm just going to go ahead and do this one real quick. And this is what I recommend, Tim, for you, are the CA hinges, just because they're super light, very strong, and on a glider, I mean, these things weigh absolutely nothing. So these are the ones I would go with. What I do is I get the square, usually leave it as is, you can cut it however you want. I put a T-pin dead center in it. And what this is going to do is basically first let you get it perfectly centered between the rudder and the plane, but second, it just gives you the thickness of that pin, believe it or not, gives you just the perfect gap to where you have you know, perfect throws. It looks close, you don't have a big space in between and all that. So we'll go ahead and get these installed. I got them pre-cut. I'm gonna do, I could easily get away with 2 on this rudder, but I did 3. I did 1 up top, 1 in the middle, and 1 down below. So basically all you do, you don't CA them yet, you get your holes cut, try and keep them straight, tight, and match them up very well with the rudder. I haven't test fit them yet, so hopefully they all fit well. Okay, that one fits great. So that one's in. T-pin, I pushed it all the way until it stopped. Alright, so I'll grab one of my other ones here, if I can find them. Oh, here they are. Alright, so I'll grab my next one, keep the pin head on this side, and just go ahead and stick her in all the way up to the pin. And you want to take a look at them and make sure that they're square with each other, or at least that they're square with the angle of the rudder. Okay, and go ahead and get the last one here. It is ready to go, and I got it down here towards a very thick base, so I actually chose a much thicker hinge here. because once these set up and dry and you work them a little bit, they literally just, I mean, they've been so easy. They're an awesome hinge. Okay, so I got the heads in. I got the pins all this way. I got them all pushed in towards the pins. So still, if you haven't ever done these before, no CA. But when you do use CA, remember guys, if you're working with EPO, you don't have to have foam safe CA. You can save some money and buy regular CA. But it's got to be thin CA. I'm using foam safe thin CA. So what you do is I've already matched and cut my holes in my rudder. So all I'm going to do now is slide it on there, and as long as you keep it straight and push it straight, they're not going to take off on you in any weird direction. The hardest part is, if you make a good thin cut, is getting it started in the actual hole that you cut out for the rudder. So try and get the top one in without pulling the middle one out, which is usually the curse of these things. There we go. I think we're all in, which we are. I'm going to move it up just a little bit. Move it up, move it up. Okay, and I'm going to butt it all the way up against the rudder. Take a quick look, make sure I'm level here, level on the bottom. Okay, and once I've got it pushed all the way in, I'm going to go ahead and bend it either two ways, the full amount that it'll allow you to do, or the amount of throw that you know is way more than you're going to need. So I'll go ahead and bend it, and I'm not pushing forward really because I want it to give me that gap. So bend it one way, bend it the other way, and there you've got your gap. It's perfect all the way down, you're perfectly level. So now you're ready to make these hinges work. And this is the main reason I love them, is because it literally does not get any easier than this. These hinges are awesome. So drop my CA, grab that. Alright, pop these off. And this is a noob video. I mean, you guys have been doing this very long. You guys know all this stuff. I mean, not necessarily CA hinges. I'm really surprised at how many people do not know about CA hinges. I guess it was kind of an old school balsa thing back in the day, but you know, we used to use these quite a bit. So all you do now to install your CA hinges is you put 3 drops of thin CA, okay, on each, all 3, in my case all 3, but on each of the hinges you put 3 drops, and then trust me, don't mess with it, don't push it, don't adjust it, put your 3 drops as long as everything's good, and walk away for 15 minutes. So I'm gonna go 1, 2, 3, and you can be liberal with the drops, guys, because remember, it soaks into this material and expands and soaks all the way into where it's inserted into the rudder. So there's 1, 2, and 3. And last one, we got 1, 2, and that 1 was more like a 2 and 3, so that one's on there good. So what we'll do now is we'll leave it alone for 15 minutes. I'm not going to touch it, and we'll come back. I'll pull the pins and show the full range of movement and motion, and we are good. You're done. I mean, that's all there is with these hinges. Are awesome. So like I said, you can do nylon. I wouldn't recommend pin, but I would highly recommend the CA hinges. So stay tuned.